It was past midnight on an empty stretch of Highway 57, the kind of road where headlights are the only company, and the silence feels personal. The rain had just stopped, leaving a slick sheen on the pavement that reflected every beam of light, like broken glass. Camille Turner gripped the steering wheel of her black Chevy Tahoe with steady hands, her posture straight, her eyes alert. She wasn't lost. She was just taking the long way home. Sometimes silence was better than the noise of thoughts. She was dressed in a simple black hoodie, joggers and running shoes. No insignias, no medals, no uniform. Just another tired, black woman on her way home from a long day. And then it happened. Flashing red and blue lights. A shrill siren pierced the quiet like a needle to the eardrum. Camille's jaw tightened. "Seriously," she muttered. She pulled over calmly, already lowering her window. Her license and registration were in the center console. She kept both hands on the wheel. From the side mirror, she watched the patrol car door swing open. Out stepped a white male officer, tall, stocky, buzz-cut. His nameplate wasn't visible yet, but the attitude came in loud and clear with his slow, suspicious walk. He placed his hand on his holster as he approached. No smile, no courtesy, just assumption. "License and registration," he barked. Camille met his eyes. "Good evening, officer. May I ask what I was pulled over for?" "You were swerving." "Lane violation," he replied, not answering her question so much as dismissing it. "I see." Her voice was calm, controlled. Years of leadership taught her to keep composure even under pressure, especially under pressure. The officer scanned her face as if looking for something, an attitude, a lie, an excuse to escalate. "You been drinking tonight?" he asked. "No." He peered inside the SUV with a flashlight. "Step out of the vehicle." Camille blinked. "Is there a reason?" "Step out of the vehicle," he repeated, his tone rising. She exhaled slowly. No point arguing. Not here. Not now. As she opened the door and stepped out, he immediately took hold of her arm. "Hey, easy," she started, but he already had her turned around. "Hands behind your back." She hesitated. That was the mistake. "Resisting," he shouted, slamming her face first against the hood. The cold metal stunned her. This wasn't real, was it? Her body tensed, trained to react. But she didn't fight, didn't move. "Sir, I'm not resisting," she said, voice muffled. He cuffed her hard, ignoring every word. As he shoved her into the back seat of the cruiser, her hoodie rode up, revealing a tattoo on her shoulder, a barely visible army insignia. He didn't notice. Didn't care. To him, she was just another black woman in a nice car, on the wrong road at the wrong time. And as the door slammed shut behind her, Camille looked out through the rain-streaked window, with eyes that had seen war, led troops, and survived ambushes in foreign deserts. But nothing ever quite prepared her for this. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough? The holding cell smelled like bleach and regret. Cold metal bench. One flickering fluorescent light. Camille Turner sat, silently, wrists still sore from the cuffs. She could have spoken up. Could have ended this the second she was booked. But she didn't, because that's the point. She wanted to see how far they'd go. What the system would do when it thought no one was watching, or when it thought she was no one. A young officer glanced at her through the glass, chewing gum with his arms crossed. "Hey, you gonna tell us your name yet? Or do you just like playing games?" Camille looked at him and offered a calm smile. "No games, just observation." He scoffed and walked off. She leaned back, eyes drifting to the ceiling. It wasn't. The first time she'd been underestimated, wouldn't be the last, but it never stopped being exhausting. 2 decades earlier, Detroit, Michigan. A girl, no more than 10, stood at the doorway of a crumbling apartment as police officers carried her, father away in handcuffs. He was screaming, drunk, blaming the world, blaming his dead wife, blaming her. The neighbors watched from behind their curtains. No one said anything. No one ever did. Her name was Camille then, too. But she was smaller, quieter, a kid learning. Far too early that the world wasn't fair, and didn't try to be. After that day, she bounced from home to home until a retired schoolteacher named Angela Holmes decided she'd seen enough of her former student slipping through the cracks. Angela didn't have much, but she had warmth, a steady presence, and a no-nonsense attitude that Camille strangely respected. Angela would say things like, "Baby, life will try to tell you who you are. You better get real loud about who you're gonna be." That stuck. Atty. 18. Camille walked into a U.S. Army recruiting office and enlisted. No fanfare, no speech, just a signature and a promise. I'm not dying in this neighborhood. Present day. The holding cell Camille rubbed her temples and whispered to herself, "I've led troops through hell. This ain't even close." She thought of her first deployment to Kandahar, her hands shaking as she radioed in her first medevac, of the kid soldier who died in her arms because the air support came too late, of the Afghan girl she carried on. Her back through gunfire because civilians first meant something to her. She'd been called things. Bossy. Too aggressive. Too emotional. But also Captain Major Colonel, and now General. But none of that mattered to the man who threw her against the hood of her own car. Outside the cell, Officer Whitaker was at the front desk, sipping coffee like nothing had happened, pulled. "Her over for lane drifting," he said to the officer on duty. "Mouthy. Gave attitude, didn't comply. She got ID? Nope. Playing games." He wasn't worried. Not yet. Meanwhile, down the hall, a young black officer named Malik Jordan stared at the booking report and raised an eyebrow. Something about the name. Camille Turner. He did a quick search in the database. His eyes widened. U.S. Army. Active duty, rank, Brigadier General, security clearance, top secret. Photograph, her. His stomach dropped. He rushed to the sergeant on shift. Sarge, we got a problem." Camille heard the door click open. Officer Jordan stood there, clipboard in hand, face pale. "Ma'am, I'm so sorry. This is a huge mistake." She stood slowly, looked him right in the eyes. I know." He held the door open for her. "You're free to go. We didn't know who you were." She paused at the threshold. "That's exactly the problem," she said. And then she walked out. But this wasn't over. Not even close. Because some stories don't end with freedom. They begin there. Want to see what happens next? Hit subscribe and drop a comment with where you're reading from. Has the world ever underestimated you? How did you respond? The morning air outside the precinct was sharp, but Camille didn't flinch. She stepped down the concrete steps like a woman who had just been released from something much bigger than a holding cell. Across the street, a teenager looked up from his phone. His eyes squinted, recognizing her face, not from last night's incident but from somewhere bigger. A magazine cover, a televised speech, or maybe that viral video of her saluting a fallen soldier's mother while tears streamed down both. Their faces. She didn't speak, didn't need to. She got into her Tahoe, closed the door, and just sat there. The silence was crushing. Her phone buzzed. "Angela, Mom. Saw the news. Call me the second you're ready. David, X. Camille, I swear. If you don't press charges, I will. Army comms urgent. Please confirm your status immediately." She sighed and leaned her head against the steering wheel. 6 hours later, it hits the news. Black Army General, detained in mistaken arrest. Decorated war hero, handcuffed by local police in late-night stop. Was it racial profiling or routine procedure? The story spread like wildfire. Everyone had something to say. News anchors debated policy. Hashtags started trending. Some people were outraged. Others were skeptical. Why didn't she just show her ID? Was she hiding something? Cops have a hard job, you know. Camille watched it all unfold on a muted TV screen inside her apartment. Her awards lined the wall behind her, but right now they felt more like paper shields than proof of worth. She picked up a small photo frame from the shelf. A younger her in fatigues, grinning ear to ear, arms slung over Sergeant Lenny. Her closest. Brother-in-arms, the man who once took a bullet for her in Fallujah. "You're not invisible anymore," he had once told her. "You're a damn general, Camille. Make 'em see you." She smiled sadly. "They saw me last night, Lenny, just not the way you meant." Meanwhile, Officer Whitaker Brad Whitaker sat alone in his small apartment. TV off, phone buzzing constantly. He didn't answer. He had seen the news, seen her face, heard the word general over and over. He couldn't believe it. No, he didn't want to, because believing it meant admitting something much worse, that he never saw her. Not really. Not as a human being, just a profile, a problem, a silhouette in the dark that matched every fear and bias he'd carried since childhood. He opened a beer, cracked it, didn't drink. His hands were shaking. Camille's phone rings, a call from the Pentagon. "Ma'am," the voice said, crisp, professional. "We are prepared to release an official statement, but we need your direction. Do you want to press charges? We'll support you either way." Camille didn't answer right away. The silence on the other end lingered like static. She finally said, "No statement yet. Not until I've had time to think, and I'll speak for myself." Later that night, Angela's kitchen table. Angela poured hot tea into a chipped mug that read, "She who dares wins." "You knew this would happen eventually," she said. Sliding the mug over, Camille took a sip. "Not like this." Angela stared her down. "You gonna tell your story? Or let them write it for you?" Camille set the mug down. "Hard? I'm tired, Mom." Angela nodded. "Then rest, but not for long. Because if you don't stand up now, every girl who looks like you will sit down a little lower tomorrow." A decision begins to form. Camille stood up and walked to the window. Outside, the night looked quieter than it felt. She saw herself reflected in the glass. Not the general, not the soldier, just a woman. She whispered, almost like a vow. "They thought I was just another black woman. Let's show them what that really means." Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. When the world misjudges you, do you fight back or rise above? Tell us your story. You never know who you might inspire. Brad Whitaker sat on the edge of his childhood bed, staring at the same cracked ceiling he used to count while pretending he didn't hear his parents fighting. The house hadn't changed much. Same faded wallpaper. Same faint smell of tobacco and mildew. Even the living room lamp still leaned a little to the left, just like it did the night his father threw a beer bottle across the room because the Tigers lost a game. "You brought shame to this house," his father had said over the phone just hours ago. Brad didn't answer, didn't have the energy. He stared at the badge on his nightstand. It looked different now, heavier, quieter. 25 years earlier, Alabama suburbs, Brad was 9 years old when he saw his father slam a black teenager against a car hood. The boy had been walking down the street with a backpack and a broken bike tire, that's all. But the elder Whitaker, a longtime cop with 3 decades on the force, called it suspicious activity. "They don't belong in this neighborhood after dark," he said. "We don't wait to be sorry. We act." Brad watched from the back seat of the squad car, eyes wide. The boy's eyes met his for a split second, full of rage, fear, and something worse, resignation. Brad didn't understand it then, but the image never left him. Back to present day, Camille's name. Everywhere. Now, that same look was in every photo of Camille Turner splashed across the news. She wasn't screaming, wasn't shouting, just looking through the camera like she'd seen the world burn and didn't expect better. And still, she was standing. Brad ran his hands through his hair and let out a long breath. "What the hell have I done?" Camille's apartment. A plan begins back at her DC apartment. Camille sat in front of her laptop, fingers hovering above the keyboard. Her inbox was flooded. Veterans asking how to support her. Young black cadets thanking her for existing. Journalists requesting. Interviews dance civil rights. Groups demanding legal action. She hadn't responded to any of them. Not yet. Instead, she opened a blank Word doc and began to write, not a press statement, but a personal reflection. "I have worn this country's uniform with honor for 22 years. I have buried soldiers, led missions, delivered folded flags to families who will never be whole again, but nothing prepared me for the weight of being mistaken for less than on a quiet road in my own country. I am not angry. I am awake. And I'm done being quiet." She paused, backspaced, rewrote. This wasn't just about her anymore. A phone call that changes everything. Just as she hit save, her phone buzzed again. Unknown number. She hesitated, then answered. A male voice came through, low and uncertain. Is this General Turner? Yes, who's calling? A pause, then, it's Officer Brad Whitaker. Silence. Camille leaned back in her chair, instantly alert. How did you get this number? I asked around. I know you have every reason to hang up, but please don't. I just need to talk to you, off the record. Camille didn't say anything. I didn't know who you were, he continued. That's the truth, but it's not an excuse. I've been trying to figure out what the hell's wrong with me, and I think maybe it's deeper than I ever wanted to admit. More silence. Then Camille said, Meet me tomorrow. Public place. Bright daylight. Okay, he said quietly. Name the spot. Late that night, Camille visits the war wall. The Vietnam Veterans Memorial gleamed in the moonlight. Camille ran her fingers across the names, remembering faces, moments, people she couldn't save. She wasn't looking for comfort. She was looking for clarity. What was justice in a world so broken? Was it punishment or progress? As the city slept, Camille Turner stood among the names of the fallen, planning a next step not for herself, but for everyone who'd ever been unseen, unheard, underestimated. Tomorrow, she'd face him. Not as a victim, but as a mirror. Hit subscribe and drop a comment with where you're reading from. Have you ever questioned what you were taught to believe? What helped you unlearn it? The cafe was in the middle of Georgetown. Quiet, neutral, white walls, wood accents, overpriced coffee. The kind of place where people sipped lattes while pretending nothing bad ever happened in the world. Camille chose the seat facing the entrance. She always sat facing the door. At 9:57 a.m., he walked in. Officer Brad Whitaker, no badge, no uniform, just a wrinkled flannel shirt and an expression that couldn't decide between guilt and fear. He looked smaller without the belt, the weapon, the power. Their eyes locked. He walked over like a man heading into court or church. Maybe both. You sure about this? She asked before he could sit down. No, he admitted, but I'm here. She nodded toward the chair. He sat. The first few minutes was silence, just the buzz of espresso machines, people laughing in. The background, none of it touched their table. Brad finally spoke. I didn't know who you were. Camille blinked slowly. You said that already. I mean, it wasn't personal. She tilted her head. That's the worst part. He swallowed hard. I grew up thinking I had everything figured out, who to trust, who not to. I didn't even question it. You don't have to explain racism to me, officer. Brad, he said quietly. She raised an eyebrow. You want to make this personal now? He looked down at his hands. I've been carrying things I never named, things my dad taught me, things I saw and just accepted. You're the first person to ever force me to look at it. You mean the first person who didn't let you get away with it? Brad flinched. A pause. He looked at her, really looked, and for the first time saw the weight in her eyes. Not just the anger, the weariness. You didn't say anything that night, he said. Why? Camille leaned forward slightly. Because I wanted to see who you really were when no one was watching. I've spent my life being told to prove myself. I wanted to see if you'd even ask who I was, before you assumed I was something to control. Looked like he wanted to disappear, she continued. And the worst part, I wasn't surprised, not for 1 second. Then she took out a folder. She slid it across the table. He looked down. What's this? An opportunity, Camille said. Not redemption, not forgiveness. Just a door. Inside, a document outlining a bias and de-escalation training program she'd proposed to the city council. One that required active duty officers to attend, one that she would personally lead, and one that began with him. Brad blinked. You want me to? Yes. Front row, full participation, no optics, no cameras, just growth. He shook his head slowly. I don't know if I'm the right guy for this. You weren't the right guy that night either, but here we are. He closed the folder, sat still for a long moment, then quietly, I'll be there. Camille nodded, stood up, and left without another word. Back outside, she stepped into the light and took a deep breath. This wasn't justice. But maybe it was the beginning of something close. Meanwhile, back at the table, Brad opened the folder again. On the last page, written in neat handwriting, "Healing is not a moment. It's a decision you make every single day. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're reading from. What does accountability look like to you? Is it justice? Change or both?" 3 days after the meeting, the headlines hit. Army General meets privately with cop who arrested her. Camille Turner refuses to press charges. Critics call it a missed opportunity. Forgiveness or failure? Nation divided over General's response. What began as quiet reflection was now full-blown public debate. Morning News Roundtable, national broadcast. "Frankly," said the political analyst in a sharp navy suit, "this was her moment. She had the nation's attention. She could have sued, testified before Congress, lit a fire under every broken department in America. Instead, she chose dialogue. That's not justice. That's weakness," another voice chimed in. "Or maybe that's strength," said the black, female journalist beside him. "Because let's be real, nothing changes when people just yell. What she's doing is strategic. She's staying in the room." The panel argued on. Camille watched none of it. Camille's office. The Pentagon, her inbox was at 200 plus unread. Aides, officials, soldiers, everyone wanted clarity. A few applauded her restraint. More questioned her silence. Inside her office, Camille sat in full uniform, back straight, face unreadable. Major Elena Ramirez, her second-in-command, entered with a stack of briefing files. "You're trending again," she said dryly, tossing a folder on Camille's desk. "I didn't ask to trend. No one ever does. But here we are." Ramirez hesitated. "You sure about this training thing? With him?" Camille didn't look up. "It's not about him. It's about the system that made him." Ramirez nodded slowly. "Still, some folks think you're letting him off easy." Camille finally looked up. "I didn't let him off anything. He has to sit in a room with the woman he once thought didn't matter. That's not easy. That's a mirror." Online, the comments were brutal. Some called her a sellout. Some called her a saint. Some called her every name but her own. Another black leader choosing peace when we needed fire. This is why nothing changes. She's playing chess while we're screaming at checkers. She's afraid to make white folks uncomfortable. She's making everyone uncomfortable, actually. Angela's porch. That night. The wind rustled the trees as Camille sat with her foster mother under the soft yellow glow of a porch light. Angela rocked slowly in her chair, sipping sweet tea. "They're tearing you apart online." "I know. You..." "Hurt?" Camille exhaled. "Not as much as I thought I'd be, mostly just tired." Angela studied her. "You remember what I told you back when you got that first stripe on your sleeve?" Camille nodded. "Being the first at something means you carry the weight for everyone who comes next." Angela nodded back. "Still true." Camille whispered almost to herself. "But what if the weight breaks me before they get here?" Angela leaned in. "Then make damn sure it breaks you into something even stronger." Meanwhile, Brad trains in silence. Brad sat in the precinct break room, eyes locked on a thick training manual marked Mandatory Bias Deconstruction. Unit 1. Unlearning the Lie. Other officers looked at him sideways. Whispers, judgments. He ignored them. He underlined every word. Every uncomfortable truth, not out of guilt, out of hunger. Camille sends the email subject line. "Training begins, no exceptions, to entire police department, city officials, press." Attached, a list of mandatory sessions, her name at the top. Instructor, speaker, architect of the very curriculum that would now be used nationwide if the pilot succeeded. This wasn't about a slap on the wrist. It was about a root system being ripped up from the inside. Camille hit send. A war hero, a black woman, a symbol, a threat, a bridge. She was becoming all of it at once. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. Do you believe? Real change comes from inside the system, or breaking it apart. Tell us what you'd do in her shoes. The conference room was cold and sterile, typical government architecture. Gray walls, fluorescent lighting, a thin metallic smell from the old AC vents. Rows of plastic chairs were set up facing a podium and projection screen that read, "Unlearning the Lie, a tactical approach to bias recognition and de-escalation." Instructor, Brigadier General Camille Turner. It wasn't open to the public, no press, no cameras, just 30 uniformed officers who were either furious to be there or pretending not to be. In the front row, just as she'd demanded, Officer Brad Whitaker sat spine stiff, jaw clenched. He didn't say a word, but his presence spoke volumes. At exactly 8 a.m. the door opened, and she walked in, Camille Turner, dressed not in fatigues, but in a navy blazer and black slacks. Civilian, but commanding. She didn't smile. She didn't offer small talk. She walked to the front, looked out at the sea of eyes, some blank, some angry, some nervously curious, and said simply, "I'm not here to make you feel better. I'm here to make you see." The room shifted. Some officers leaned back, arms crossed, others straightened like they were preparing for inspection. Camille clicked the remote. A photo appeared on the screen. Grainy, nighttime, a black woman being held against a squad car, her hoodie riding up. Her face turned away, she turned to the room. "How many of you see a threat in this photo?" No one answered. "Raise your hand if this looks like someone you've arrested." A few hands hesitantly went up. "Now," she said, "raise your hand if you've ever been that person." Silence. Brad's hand twitched. He didn't raise it. But he didn't look away. The curriculum was brutal. No fluff, no euphemisms. She walked them through cases, showed data, explained how split-second decisions aren't instincts, they're programming. If you've been trained by the world to see a threat when you see someone like me, she said, then your badge becomes a weapon whether you pull the trigger or not. At one point, she asked each officer to fill out a form anonymously. What race do you associate with aggression? What gender do you associate with compliance? What face do you picture when you hear criminal? Some tried to lie. She didn't stop them, because the ones who lied on paper had just admitted the truth in their fear. Then she called on Brad, Officer Whitaker. He looked up, startled. "Yes, ma'am. Why did you pull me over?" Every eye turned to him. He swallowed. Hard. "You said I was swerving. Was I?" A long pause. "No," he said quietly. "You weren't." The room went still. She nodded. "Thank you." Then she looked around the room. "I'm not here for an apology," she said. "I'm here to change your aim, because if your weapon is always loaded with fear, then one day it'll fire at the wrong heartbeat." Break time. People filed out. Some shook their heads, some stayed behind to think. Brad stayed seated. Camille walked past him. He looked up. "I wasn't ready for that," he admitted. Camille paused. "You weren't supposed to be." She kept walking. Later that day, an unexpected visitor as Camille packed up. Officer Layla Grant, a black woman from the back row, approached. "I've been on the force 10 years, she said. "And I've been pretending not to notice how it changes people." Camille looked at her. "It changed you?" Layla nodded. "I stopped seeing myself in the people we pull over. You made me remember why I joined in the first place." Camille gave a small, tired smile. "Then the system didn't win yet." That night, Camille's journal entry day 1. No miracles, just fractures, small ones. But cracks let the light in, don't they? Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. Have you ever had to confront something uncomfortable about yourself or someone else? What did it teach you? The first protest started quietly. Just 12 people standing outside the precinct with signs that read, "Justice for Camille." This system protects its own. Arrested for being black. Promoted for being strong. By nightfall, there were over 300 news vans rolled in. Live streams exploded. A chant began to ripple through the crowd. What was her rank? General. What was his excuse? Fear. What do we want? Reform. When do we want it? Now. Camille wasn't there. She was watching from her living room, jaw tight, phone buzzing non-stop, inside City Hall. Panic behind closed doors, city officials huddled behind conference tables. "This is spiraling," said the mayor, rubbing his temples. I didn't even want a lawsuit." One council member snapped. "She gave us a blueprint. Why are people still mad? Because she forgave a man before the people got a chance to punish him, someone else muttered. The room went quiet. Everyone was thinking the same thing. Camille Turner had become too powerful. Too fast? Camille's apartment, 114. Her phone vibrated with a blocked call. She hesitated, then answered. The voice was male. Deep, masked, twisted with threat. You think you're some kind of savior. You're just another angry black woman, in a suit, and we don't let people like you rewrite the rules. Click, she didn't panic. She reached for her firearm, checked the chamber, loaded, safety on. Then she called Major Ramirez. You're not going to like this, Camille said calmly. But I'm not backing down. Morning headlines. Threat made against General Camille Turner. Amidst growing tensions. Police department scrambles as civil unrest spreads. General Turner stands ground. I will not be intimidated into silence. The media went wild. Half the country called her brave. The other half called her dangerous. Meanwhile, Brad faces his own backlash. Inside the locker room, Brad walked past 3 officers who stopped talking the moment he entered. He knew that silence. He'd heard it growing up at his father's dinner table. Whitaker, one finally said. You giving interviews now? Gonna cry on camera and ask for a hug? Brad stared at him, calm, clear-eyed. No, he said, but I'd recommend sitting in on the next training session. You could use it. That earned a scoff, but also, deep down, a flicker of something else. Respect. Camille visits a school. At the edge of the city, Camille stood in a classroom full of middle school girls, most of them black and brown, who watched her with wide, unblinking eyes. You're the lady from the news, one of them whispered. The general. Camille knelt beside her. That's me. Are you scared? She thought for a second, then said, Yes, but fear can't stop me anymore, not when I know you're watching. The girl grinned. I want to be a general too. Camille smiled. Then I better clear the path for you. Later that night, alone again, Camille poured a glass of water and sat by the window. Sirens echoed in the distance. Protesters marched 3 blocks away. She thought of the uniform in her closet. The medals, the silence of men in power, the weight of generations. She whispered. They thought I'd just disappear, but they forgot. I was trained for war. Hit subscribe and drop a comment with where you're reading from. What's scarier to you, standing alone or standing in front of the world with your truth? The official notice arrived by courier. A thick envelope stamped with the city seal. Inside, a memo filled with legal jargon designed to sound polite, but carry a dagger. Effective immediately, General Camille Turner's civilian-led police training initiative is under review and temporarily suspended pending further evaluation. Translation. They were shutting her down. City Hall, boardroom of polished cowards. We gave her a chance, the mayor said, straightening his tie like it made him more honest. She's too divisive, added a councilwoman scrolling through. Angry emails. Too polarizing. Half the city's protesting, the other half is threatening to sue. Another official, older, grey, spoke carefully. This isn't about race, it's about control. We're losing it. The room nodded in agreement. Camille. Turner had become a risk. And in politics, risks are removed. Camille's office. Pentagon Major Ramirez read the memo out loud. When she finished, she looked at Camille. So, what now? Press conference? No, Camille said. I'm not giving them sound bites. I'm giving them a strategy they can't erase. Ramirez raised a brow. Which is? Camille turned her laptop toward her, fingers already typing. Subject line. National Training Summit, launching in 10 days, 2 civil rights leaders. Federal agencies, military commanders, black officers, journalists, activists. Attached, full blueprint of her training curriculum, rebranded as the Turner Protocol, a scalable, federally adaptable program on tactical bias recognition, de-escalation, and equity in force deployment. This isn't just a city program anymore, Camille said. It's a national movement. The press finds out within 12 hours it's everywhere. General Turner to launch national reform program, despite local shutdown. Federal leaders signal interest in Turner Protocol. Camille Turner won't. Back down, and now Washington's listening. Twitter explodes, news anchors scramble to reframe the narrative. Political analysts flip their talking points mid-show. Camille doesn't say a word to the media. She just works. Meanwhile, Brad shows up again. He's in civilian clothes, standing awkwardly outside her office door. Ramirez opens it, eyes narrowing. "You got 5 minutes," she says. He walks in. Stands like he's waiting for judgment. Camille barely looks up. "You here to ask for forgiveness again?" "No," Brad says. "I'm here to help." She finally meets his eyes. "Why?" He shrugs. "Because if I was part of the disease, I want to be part of the cure." Camille considers him for a long moment. "You really mean that?" He nods. She taps her pen against the desk. "Fine. You'll help. But not with words. You'll speak at the summit. Tell them exactly who you were and who you're trying to become." Brad's throat tightens. "That'll get me fired." Camille's voice is steady. "Then don't waste your 5 minutes." Late that night, Camille's apartment package arrives with no return address. Inside, a shattered police badge, wrapped in a Confederate flag. No note, no surprise. Camille holds it for a second, then walks to her fireplace and tosses it in. The plastic burns, the fabric curls. She stares into the flames, her voice low and certain. "They want a war? I'll give them a revolution." Hit subscribe and drop a comment with where you're watching from. Have you ever had to keep pushing? When the world told you to quit, what kept you going? The auditorium buzzed with electricity. Over 1,000 people packed the seats. Journalists, law enforcement brass, civil rights icons, veterans, students, ordinary citizens, and a row of cameras, ready to beam the event across every major network. On the stage, a clean black banner with bold white letters, the Turner Protocol, National Training for Tactical Integrity. Sound equity and policing behind it. A single podium, no podium full of bureaucrats. No staged parade of endorsements. Just Camille Turner standing alone, again opening remarks. She stepped up to the mic, calm and poised. "This isn't about a badge or a title. This is about what happens when fear gets a weapon and the lie goes. Unchallenged. I'm not here to fix everything, but I am here to make it impossible to keep pretending." Applause. A few standing, more unsure. Exactly the pressure she wanted. Then came Brad. Camille introduced him by name. No embellishment, no protection. Officer Brad Whitaker. 12 years on the force, recently learning. Brad stepped forward, tight in the throat, but not shaking. "Not today." He looked out at the crowd. Faces of color, power, anger, hope. "I'm not proud of how I got here," he began. "I pulled over General Turner because I made an assumption, a dangerous one. I didn't know who she was, but more than that, I didn't care to ask, because somewhere deep down, I believed I already knew. I was wrong, dead wrong," gasps. Silence. Then he said it. "The hardest part about confronting bias is that it hides in what you think is normal. I am not healed, I am not redeemed, but I am awake." The audience was still. Some stunned, some skeptical, but they listened. And for the first time in his life, Brad didn't look away. A reporter raises her hand. Camille returns to the mic for Q&A. A reporter in the second row stands. Blonde, early 30s. Press badge gleaming, she doesn't smile. "General Turner," she says, voice sharp, "some say your decision to not press charges against Officer Whitaker set a dangerous precedent, that you showed weakness, that you let him off easy because of guilt. How do you respond to that?" Camille holds the mic tighter. The whole room leans in. She speaks slowly, clearly. "Letting someone off is pretending it never happened. Holding them accountable is making sure it never happens again. What I did wasn't mercy. It was strategy." The room erupts, not with wild applause, but with something better. Nods, murmurs of agreement. A shift, the kind that happens when a lie gets pulled from its roots. Backstage. Aftermath. Camille wipes her brow with a towel, breathing deep. Ramirez walks over, her phone buzzing nonstop. "You're trending again, good or bad?" Ramirez smirks. "Both, always both." Brad walks past, eyes meeting Camille's. He doesn't say anything, he just nods once and walks on. That night, home alone. Again, Camille stares at the messages flooding her inbox. Thousands. One catches her eye. Subject line: "My son is still alive because of you inside." A note from a black mother in Chicago. Her son had been stopped by police that morning. The officer was wearing a new badge number, had completed Turner protocol training. He came home safe. That's all. I just wanted to say thank you. Camille read the message 3 times. Then she turned off her phone, sat in silence, and allowed herself to feel it. The weight of progress, small, fragile, real. Hit subscribe and drop a comment with where you're reading from. Can change happen without breaking everything? Or does the system need to be torn down to be rebuilt? Let us know your truth. The morning after the summit, Camille woke up to a message that wasn't from a reporter, a politician, or a supporter. It was from her father. She hadn't spoken to him in 15 years. Text message: "I saw you on TV. You sounded like your mother. I don't expect forgiveness, but I'd like to talk, if you're still the kind of woman who believes people can change." Calvin Turner. She sat on the edge of her bed, phone in hand, heart thudding. This wasn't part of the plan. Flashback 15 years ago, Camille was still a cadet. First semester at West Point. Her father, a former cop, was a decorated officer. Turned bitter, turned angry, turned absent. He told her joining the military was betrayal. "You think the army's gonna love you more than the badge loved me?" "The badge didn't love you, Dad," she had snapped. "You loved the power, and when they took it, you hated everything that reminded you weren't in charge anymore." He hadn't spoken to her since. Now, she replies, "You get one. Our public place tomorrow, don't waste it." The meeting, a diner on the edge of town. She chose a booth by the window, arms crossed. No smile. Her father walked in slower than she remembered, thinner, older, a limp in his right leg he didn't used to have. He sat across from her. No handshake, just silence. Finally he said, "You look like your mother when you're pissed." Off. Camille didn't flinch. "Then I must look like her all the time," he chuckled. Fair, he got to the point. "I heard what you said. About fear with a weapon, about the lie. And I realized I was part of it." She raised an eyebrow. "You came all this way to say you were racist?" "No, I came to say I was scared, of losing control, of being wrong, of being replaced. I trained a lot of young officers who looked at black folks like suspects first. Hell, I probably trained men like that one who pulled you over." Camille's jaw tightened. "I didn't raise you to play safe, Camille," he said. "But I did raise you to fight smart. You've built something, but they're coming for you." Harder now. She leaned forward. "They already came, and I'm still standing." He nodded. "Then maybe now's the time to stop standing alone." Back at the Pentagon, later. That day, Camille sat across from Ramirez, who noticed her expression was softer. "Something happened?" Ramirez asked. "Ghost from my past showed up," Camille said. "Turns out he still bleeds like the rest of us." Ramirez raised a brow. "You forgive him?" "No," Camille said, "but I heard him. That's enough, for now." She walked into her next briefing, heads turned. The summit was still buzzing. But now there was something else around Camille, a sense of legacy forming. Because now she wasn't just challenging the present, she was reclaiming the past. Final scene, Camille's voiceover, internal monologue. People think revolution looks like fire, but sometimes it looks like a broken man asking for a second chance, and sometimes it sounds like the voice inside you finally saying, "You're not the one who needs to carry the guilt." Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. What do you do when the past knocks on your door? Do you answer, or do you let it stay buried? This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward even when things get tough? The call came just before midnight. It was an unlisted number, with a voice that immediately made her stiffen. "General Turner, this is Samantha Hale, White House Deputy Chief of Staff. We need to meet." Camille's first thought was, this is not going to be good. But she said nothing, just waited for the other shoe to drop. Hale continued, "We've been following your initiative closely, and we believe it's time for a nationwide partnership, if you're interested." The next morning, meeting at the White House. Camille was led into a quiet, secure conference room. The walls were lined with American flags and portraits of past presidents, the kind of room where political deals were made, where the weight of the nation was felt in every corner. Samantha Hale sat across from her. Her face was carefully neutral, eyes sharp, calculating. "You've turned a lot of heads, General," Hale said, leaning forward. "Your program is one of the most successful reforms we've seen in decades." But Camille's pulse quickened. But was never good news. "We need you to consider joining a national law enforcement commission that will allow us to streamline your protocol into federal policy." Camille nodded slowly. "And what's the catch?" Hale smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "The catch is that we can't afford the kind of controversy you're courting with your public stance. You're making too many waves, Camille. Too much noise. And when you're stirring things up, it gets harder to keep the narrative controlled." Camille didn't flinch, but inside, she felt the pressure. "What do you mean?" "Controlled." Hale didn't hesitate. "We need you to step back from the public eye. Let us handle the media. You'll still have input, of course, but the optics need to shift. You'll be a team player." A silent moment. Camille let the silence stretch. It wasn't about pride anymore. She wasn't there to make deals for personal glory. But there was something about this conversation, something off about the way Hale was positioning it. The room felt small suddenly, and she could feel the weight of history pressing down. She thought about the thousands of officers who'd been trained under her protocol, the families who'd been helped by her initiative, the ones who had said, "I'm safe today because of you." Was this the moment where her fight became about politics? The proposal. Hale slid a document across the table. It was the outline of the commission, a collaboration between the federal government, law enforcement agencies, and political stakeholders. The scope was huge. If she joined, Camille would have more resources than she'd ever imagined. "This will give you a platform to change the system for real," Hale said. "You'll have the ability to influence policy on a federal level, but only if you play by our rules." But there it was, buried in the fine print. She would have to sign a non-disclosure agreement, give up full control of the program, and allow a reshaping of the protocols to align with national priorities. That meant compromise. It meant sacrificing her vision. Camille's internal struggle for a moment. Camille's mind raced. The White House, political power, resources, national impact. But her gut twisted. "You're asking me to sell out." "I'm not that kind of person." Hale leaned in, her voice softer now. "Camille, we all make compromises. You know what it takes to win. You can't fight everything. We're offering you a chance to actually win." Win. But what did winning look like if she lost herself in the process? The decision. Camille stood up. "I came here for reform, not for a seat at the table of politics." Hale's face stiffened. "You understand that refusing this offer could isolate you. You'll lose federal support, you'll lose the momentum, and you'll face more resistance than you can imagine. We'll have no choice but to distance ourselves." Camille stared at her, then took a deep breath. "I didn't sign up to be a puppet." She dropped the contract on the table, not bothering to look back as she walked out. Later that night, back at the Pentagon, Camille sat alone in her office, looking at the skyline of Washington, D.C. Her mind was buzzing. She could have had it. All, but it wasn't worth it. She pulled out her phone and dialed Brad. "You still in?" she asked when he picked up. Brad's voice was steady. "I'm in. Whatever happens, I'm in." "Good. Then we keep fighting. For real this time." The announcement. The next day, Camille released a statement. "I will not be joining any political commissions. I refuse to compromise on the principles that brought me here. Reform will happen on our terms. No deals with a system that has failed too many people for too long." It was a bold declaration. Some cheered, some criticized, but Camille knew what it meant. It meant the fight was just beginning. Hit subscribe. And leave a comment with where you're watching from. What would you do? Take the deal and play by their rules, or stay true to your vision no matter the cost? Let us know. The phone call came in the middle of the night. Camille hadn't expected it. Ramirez's name flashed on the screen and her gut twisted before she even picked up. "Camille," Ramirez's voice cracked on the other end. "I need you to listen carefully. There's something you need to see." Camille sat up, heart pounding. "What is it? You're being set up. Someone in your circle is leaking information." Camille was silent for a moment. Her circle? She had trusted her team. She'd put everything into this, everything. "Who?" Ramirez paused. "It's Brad. He's been talking to the press. Not just about you, the whole program. There's a trail of meetings, calls, everything." Camille's blood ran cold. She had worked so hard to bring Brad on her side, to give him a second chance. Now, it felt like the ground was collapsing under her. "No," she said, the word coming out as a whisper. "That doesn't make sense. He promised he's been—" "I know, but we've been monitoring things. Someone from the inside is working against you. It's Brad." The evidence. The next morning, Camille sat with Ramirez in a cramped office, staring at the evidence, text messages, emails, leaked memos. It was all there. Brad's communications with the media, with political rivals, and with people who had a direct interest in seeing Camille fail. Ramirez slid another document across the table. It was a transcript of a conversation Brad had with a reporter. In it, he spoke about Camille's vulnerabilities, questioning her methods and even implying that the Turner protocol was a failure waiting to happen. Camille's hands trembled as she read the words. Betrayal wasn't just a word, it was real, and it hurt more than she could have ever imagined. "He's been playing both sides," Ramirez said quietly. "While he's been in your corner, he's been feeding them the narrative they wanted." A confrontation later that afternoon, Camille called Brad into her office. The door clicked shut behind him, and for a moment there was only silence. Brad shifted uncomfortably, eyes darting between the floor and Camille's stern gaze. She didn't speak right away, letting the weight of the situation hang in the air. Finally, Camille broke the silence. "Brad, what the hell is this?" She tossed the documents onto the desk, her voice low but filled with a fury that cut through the room. He flinched, his face paling as he looked at the messages. His eyes flickered back to hers, filled with regret, guilt, and something else. "I never meant for you to find out like this," he began, his voice hoarse. "I was trying to protect you, Camille." "Protect me?" Her voice was sharp. "You've been undermining me, Brad. You've been feeding them my weaknesses and using everything I trusted you with to fuel a narrative against me. I didn't want to. I didn't want to hurt you, but—" His voice trailed off and he shook his head. "You don't understand. They were going to ruin me. The moment I stepped into that summit, they had my number. I was stuck." Her heart beat faster, but it wasn't from anger anymore, it was from disappointment. Brad had been one of her greatest allies. She had believed in him. And now the truth hung in the air like smoke. "So you turned on me to save yourself?" Camille's voice was barely a whisper. "No." He shook his head urgently, stepping closer. "I wasn't trying to destroy you, Camille. I thought if I gave them what they wanted, they'd leave me alone. I thought I could control the narrative and we could both win." "You can't control a narrative by betraying the people who trust you," she replied, voice steady but laced with hurt. Brad swallowed hard. "I'm sorry, I never wanted to hurt you. I thought we could work together in a way that didn't make us enemies." Camille stood up, her chair scraping harshly against the floor. "We've been enemies from the moment you chose your side." The fallout, the meeting ended in silence. Brad left with his head down, a man broken by his own choices. Camille stood, there the papers still in front of her, the pieces of her world now scattered on the floor. Ramirez was waiting outside, watching her closely. "What are you going to do?" she asked gently. Camille clenched her fists. "What can I do? He's already done the damage. I have to move forward without him. But this was more than just betrayal. It's a personal failure." "Camille, don't blame yourself for his choices. You gave him a second chance. That's not on you." But Camille couldn't shake the feeling that maybe she had missed something, that somewhere along the way she hadn't seen the cracks forming beneath the surface. The public reckoning later that day, Camille called a press conference. The room was filled with reporters eager for answers. The cameras flashed, the air tense. Camille took her place at the podium, feeling the weight of everything on her shoulders. She didn't waste time. "I have always said that truth is the foundation of progress. And the truth is we've been betrayed. Someone close to me. Someone I trusted has been leaking information. They've been working against the progress we've made, and now it's time to move forward without them." She paused, the silence hanging thick. "But let me be clear, this isn't just about one person's betrayal. This is about the bigger fight, and nothing, not even this, will stop us." Back at the Pentagon, Knight Camille stood in front of a large map of the nation's law enforcement training districts. It felt cold, like the first time she'd stepped into this room, an unknown future ahead. Ramirez walked in quietly, watching her as she traced her finger along the lines. "You good?" she asked. Camille didn't look up. "I'm fine, just thinking." She wasn't fine, but she had to be. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. What would you do if you were in Camille's shoes? Would you trust again, or is betrayal a bridge too far? Let us know your thoughts. This fight is far from over. The air was thick with the sound of bustling activity at the Pentagon. The usual energy felt different today. Camille could feel it, the weight of the past few weeks pressing down harder than ever. The press, Brad's betrayal, and now the whispering within her team. She could tell that some people were looking at her differently. There was unease in the air. A mysterious meeting at 8 a.m. Camille received a message from an unknown number. "Meet me at the back entrance, 10 minutes. I have information. It's bigger than you think." Anonymous. Her pulse quickened, but she didn't hesitate. After the betrayal by Brad, nothing felt safe anymore. But this felt like the next piece of the puzzle. She didn't tell anyone. She didn't trust anyone. Not right now. The back entrance, a shadow in the dark. Camille arrived at the back entrance of the Pentagon, her military boots clicking softly on the cold concrete. The lights overhead flickered slightly, casting long shadows that made the place feel unfamiliar. A man stood there in a dark coat, his face partially obscured by the shadows. His hands were in his pockets and he didn't speak at first. Camille eyed him carefully. "I'm listening," she said firmly. The man looked around to ensure they were alone. "It's about your team. Someone's playing you, General. And it's closer than you think." Her heart skipped. "What are you talking about?" He pulled out a small device, flashing a few encrypted files on it. "These were sent from your own department, your close circle. Someone has been passing intel to outside sources, and it's happening at the highest levels. You have a mole, Camille, a traitor in your own ranks." The realization, Camille's blood ran cold as she scrolled through the data. Names, locations, operations that hadn't even been finalized yet. Someone was leaking confidential details from her own team. Whoever it was, they were making sure to cover their tracks. But it wasn't just about sabotaging the mission. This went deeper. The documents revealed deals with private contractors, people who would benefit from the failure of Camille's reform program. They had been feeding information to powerful, shadowy figures who had interests in keeping the status quo and keeping Camille's initiative from succeeding. She clenched her fists. The betrayal she had just uncovered wasn't just personal, it was strategic. Whoever was involved wanted to destroy everything she'd worked for, everything she had fought for. The confrontation. "Who's behind this?" Camille asked, her voice low. The man hesitated, then handed her another piece of paper, his voice barely a whisper. "Look at Lieutenant Marissa Green. She's your second in command. She's been acting strange lately, and I think she's been feeding information to the wrong people. She's working with them." Her mind raced. Marissa, her right-hand woman? The one person she thought she could trust above all others? No, this had to be a mistake, the hard truth. Camille immediately called a meeting with Marissa. When she entered the room, Camille's eyes met hers, searching for anything that might betray guilt. "Marissa," Camille said, voice steady but taut, "I need to ask you something." Marissa looked at her, confusion on her face. "What's going on, General?" Camille placed the encrypted files on the table. "So are you the one who's been leaking information?" For a moment there was only silence. Then Marissa's face shifted, her shoulders tensing. It was subtle, but Camille knew. It was a moment of truth. I don't know what you're talking about," Marissa stammered, her eyes flickering toward the door. She was nervous. Camille stood up, stepping closer, the weight of the accusation bearing down on them both. "I've seen the files, Marissa. I know what you've been doing." Marissa's face paled, but she didn't move. For a moment she seemed to struggle internally, and then, in a soft voice, she whispered, "I didn't have a choice, Camille. They have leverage on me. My family's in danger." Camille's heart twisted. It wasn't an excuse, it wasn't right. But Marissa's fear was real. This wasn't just an act of greed or ambition. It was desperation. Desperation that Camille had never expected from someone she had trusted so fully. The decision. "What do you mean, they have leverage on you?" Camille asked, her voice strained. Marissa hesitated, looking away. I owe them. My family's been threatened. I had no choice. I've been helping them. Just a little. Giving them information. Making sure they get what they need. So they leave us alone. But Camille, please, you have to believe me. I didn't want any of this. I wanted to help you." Camille stood still, her mind racing. She couldn't believe what she was hearing. Marissa, her loyal second-in-command, had been working for the enemy all along, but she had been forced into it. But in that moment, Camille knew that this was a line that couldn't be crossed. If she didn't stop this now, everything she had worked for would be destroyed. "You need to make it right," Camille said coldly. "You need to cut ties with them. Now." Marissa nodded, tears welling in her eyes. "I will. I'll do whatever it takes." The fallout. As soon as Marissa left the room, Camille felt the weight of the moment crash over her. She'd lost another person she trusted. But this time, it wasn't just betrayal. It was a personal choice made out of fear. She couldn't ignore it. She couldn't forget it. But what she could do was move forward, and she would. Later that day, a call to action. That night, Camille called a meeting with her remaining trusted team members. They had to act fast. "The stakes just got higher," she said to them, her voice firm and resolute. "There is a mole in our ranks, and we need to expose them immediately. We can't afford any more delays, and we can't afford more lies. This ends today." They nodded, ready to do whatever it took. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. Would you trust again after being betrayed so many times? How would you handle it? Let us know your thoughts. This story is far from a late-night decision. Camille sat alone in her office, the flickering lights casting long shadows across the room. She stared at the map of the country hanging on the wall, tracing the lines that represented her mission. But something felt different tonight. There was a weight pressing on her chest, a sense of impending danger that she couldn't shake. It had been hours since Marissa had confessed. And while Camille had given her a chance to make things right, she knew there was more at play. This wasn't just about one mole anymore. This was about trust. Her entire operation, everything she had fought for, was on the line. Every decision, from here on out, would have consequences, and Camille knew it. Her phone buzzed on the desk. It was Ramirez. "General, there's been a new development. We need to talk." Camille's stomach churned. A new development? Her mind raced, trying to anticipate what could be worse than what had already happened. She grabbed her coat and headed for the door, the night air cooling her thoughts as she made her way to the underground command center. The bad news: Ramirez stood by a large illuminated table, covered with detailed intel. The room was dim, save for the blue glow of the monitors. His face was tense, a look Camille had never seen before. He didn't even greet her. Instead, he pointed to a new set of data on the screen. "It's worse than we thought, General," he said. "The leak isn't just coming from Marissa. There's someone else, someone high up in the chain of command. The data shows that the person has access to classified files, and they've been sending it to several foreign operatives." Camille's heart skipped a beat. She didn't need to be told how serious this was. Foreign operatives? That was a whole new level of betrayal. "Who?" she demanded. "We don't have a name yet, but it's clear someone is pulling the strings, manipulating the situation to destabilize everything. We've traced the communications, but there's too much traffic. It's hard to pinpoint exactly." "Who?" Camille's hands clenched into fists. The fear that had plagued her earlier now burned into something much fiercer: rage. "How you're telling me there's a foreign influence inside my team, and we can't even identify them?" Ramirez nodded grimly. "Exactly. The way these leaks are being funneled suggests that whoever it is, they've been feeding information to disrupt key operations. This could derail the entire project, and we might not even know until it's too late. Camille's mind raced. This wasn't just a mole anymore. This was war. She had been fighting for the future of the nation, and now she was facing the enemy within. A dilemma. Camille stood in front of the table, the weight of the situation crashing down on her. How much more could she take? First Brad, then Marissa, and now an unknown enemy within the highest ranks. What if no one could be trusted anymore? The door to the command center clicked open, and Major Jackson stepped inside, looking as serious as Camille had ever seen him. "General," he said, "we've just intercepted another message. There's movement at one of our top-secret locations. It's in the clear. We don't know who's involved, but it looks like a massive breach. We need to act immediately." "Where?" Camille asked, her voice steady despite the storm inside her. Jackson's face was grim as he slid a folder onto the table. It was filled with images of a secure facility, one Camille knew was critical to the success of the entire operation. They're already making their move. "We don't have much time." The decision. Camille took a deep breath, the weight of her choices pressing on her chest. Her mind raced as she considered the options. There was no way she could ignore this. There was no way she could leave the fate of the mission in anyone else's hands. "I'm going in," she said, her voice cold and unwavering. Ramirez raised an eyebrow. "General, are you sure? We don't have all the intel yet. Going in blind could make things worse." "Sometimes," Camille said, her eyes narrowing with determination, "you have to make the hard call. And right now, this is the only call. The battle." Within, by the time Camille arrived at the facility, she was fully equipped, her military instincts sharp as ever. Every step she took was calculated. She couldn't afford any mistakes now. But as she approached the heavily secured entrance, something didn't feel right. The hairs on the back of her neck stood up. This wasn't just a breach, it was a trap. Camille motioned for her team to stay alert as they entered the facility, moving silently through the darkened corridors. Her mind raced through the possibilities. Who was behind this? Who could she trust now? They reached the command center of the facility, and that's when she saw it. The surveillance equipment had been tampered with. Someone had been here before them, and they'd made sure to cover their tracks. "It's too quiet," Camille muttered to herself. "This isn't right." Suddenly the lights flickered, and the doors slammed shut behind them. Camille spun, around heart-pounding. A voice echoed through the facility. "General, we've been expecting you." Camille's pulse quickened, but she stood tall, every muscle tense. The voice wasn't just threatening, it was taunting. Whoever was on the other side knew her too well. A familiar face. The lights snapped on, and Lieutenant Marissa Green stepped forward from the shadows. Camille's breath caught in her throat. Marissa! She had betrayed her, yet here she was, alive, standing right in front of her. "You," Camille whispered, her voice cold. "You've been working with them this whole time." Marissa smiled, but it was a bitter, hollow smile. "I didn't have a choice, General, just like you. The game was rigged from the start. You were always too focused on the mission, too focused on what you wanted to see happen. But now—" She stepped closer, her eyes gleaming. "Now, I see things clearly." The trap before Camille could react, the door behind her slammed shut. The facility was now completely sealed. She was trapped, and Marissa was the one who had set the trap in motion. "Why?" Camille demanded, the shock giving way to raw anger. "Why betray everything we built?" Marissa's eyes softened, but just for a second. "Because sometimes, General, you have to make your own choices, and I chose my side." Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. What do you think Camille will do next? Can she find a way out, or will the betrayal be her undoing? Let us know your thoughts. This story is far from over. The cold confrontation. Camille stood in the dimly lit facility, staring across at Lieutenant Marissa Green, the woman she once trusted more than anyone. Betrayal had never tasted so bitter. Every inch of Camille's body screamed for action, but she had to stay calm, strategic. Marissa's smug expression only fueled Camille's anger. "You did this. You betrayed everything we fought for." Marissa shook her head, her eyes glinting with a cold fire. "No, General. I didn't betray anything. I just chose a side. Something you're too stubborn to do." This mission, you're just a pawn in a much bigger game. You were never meant to win. Camille's hands curled into fists, but she held her ground. You're wrong. This isn't just about one mission, it's about something bigger, about doing what's right. And I don't care which side you're on. You've chosen the wrong one, the D2. Dark reality, Marissa's smile wavered just for a moment before she stepped closer, her voice lowering. I think you're in control of this mission, of this situation. They've been pulling the strings long before you even knew what was happening. You've been used, General. Camille's mind raced. Who? Who are you talking about? Marissa glanced over her shoulder at the shadows, as if checking for anyone listening. You don't know the real power at play, Camille. They're not just after you. They're after everything. Your country, your people, everything you believe in. And you're just a part of the plan. A small part, but important. They've set this up from the start. The crushing truth suddenly, the weight of Marissa's words hit Camille like a punch to the gut. The mysterious forces manipulating the situation. Who were they? What did they want? Before Camille could speak, a voice crackled over the intercom. It was a voice she hadn't heard in a long time. General Camille Hayes, the voice said, calm and chilling. You're too late. It was Brad, the former ally she'd once considered her closest confidant. His words cut through the air, like a knife. Camille's heart sank. Brad? You? You were behind this all along? He chuckled, the sound cold and distant. Did you really think we'd let you succeed, Camille? You were always a threat, and now you're nothing but a pawn in a game you can't even understand. A trap closing. In Camille's head spun. She had trusted Brad. She had fought beside him, believed in his ideals. But now she realized it had all been a lie, a carefully orchestrated plan to bring her down. She could feel the walls closing in. Marissa, Brad, the foreign operatives, all of them were working together, and Camille was stuck in the middle of it all. Her every move had been predicted, every step counted, but Camille wasn't going to roll over. She couldn't. A flicker of hope. You're wrong, Brad, Camille said, her voice low but steady. I'm not your pawn, and this game, it's not over yet. Marissa raised an eyebrow, clearly surprised by Camille's unwavering resolve. You're really still going to fight, even now? Camille's gaze hardened. Yes, because I'm not doing this just for me. I'm doing this for the people who trust me. For everyone who depends on the future we're trying to build. And I won't let you destroy that. She turned her back to them, signaling to her team. Get ready, we're leaving. We're taking this fight to them. Marissa laughed bitterly. You think you can just walk out of here? You think you can still win this? But Camille was already moving, her heart set on one thing, getting out and striking back. She would not be taken down without a fight. The escape plan Camille's team had already begun to work their way around the facility. They knew they had limited time before Brad and Marissa closed in on them, so every move had to be precise. Camille had one goal now, escape and regroup. As they maneuvered through the narrow corridors, her mind raced. Who else was involved in this conspiracy? Where had she gone wrong? The answers to these questions didn't matter right now. What mattered was survival. They had to get out, and they had to get out now. Suddenly, the sound of footsteps echoed down the hall. The enemy was closing in, and they were too close. Camille's team had no choice but to act quickly. A moment of sacrifice. As the footsteps grew louder, Camille turned to her second-in-command, Sergeant Jackson. You need to buy... Just time, she said, her voice urgent. Get the others out of here, I'll hold them off. Jackson hesitated. General, you don't have to... No time for arguments. Camille cut him off. You know what to do. Go. Jackson nodded, his face a mixture of determination and fear. Yes, ma'am. The final stand. Camille didn't wait to see him go. She turned and ran toward the exit, her heart pounding in her chest. She could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on her. This was it. She had to make it count. The door to the facility slammed open, and Camille charged forward, her team moving swiftly behind her. But as they neared the outer gates, a shot rang out. Camille ducked, instinctively pulling her team behind the concrete barriers. Her pulse quickened. It was happening. The trap had been set, and now she had to fight her way out. Betrayed. again. As they huddled behind the cover, Camille's mind raced. Who had fired the shot? It didn't matter right now. The truth was clear. They weren't just fighting for the mission anymore. They were fighting for their lives. The next few minutes felt like hours. Every movement was calculated, every step critical. But Camille didn't hesitate. She moved like a soldier, fierce, focused, and ready for anything. Then, out of the corner of her eye, Camille saw Marissa approaching again, a gun in her hand. She had chosen her side. And now Camille was faced with a choice she never wanted to make. Would she fight to stop Marissa, or would she let her go? As their eyes met, Marissa's expression softened. Regret, just for a second. But that was enough. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. What would you do in Camille's shoes? Can a person really change? Or is betrayal irreversible? Let us know your thoughts. This story is far from over. The showdown, the air was thick with tension. Camille's heart hammered in her chest as she faced Lieutenant Marissa Green, standing just a few feet away, her gun aimed squarely at Camille. The moonlight cast long shadows, making the moment feel surreal, like a nightmare she couldn't wake up from. Do you really think you can stop me, Camille? Marissa's voice was cold, but Camille could hear the faintest trace of something else, a regret she wasn't ready to admit, a flicker of doubt that hadn't been there before. You've already lost, you and your mission. It's over. Camille clenched her jaw, her grip tightening around her own weapon. The betrayal was still raw, but there was no time to wallow in it. No time for weakness. She needed answers. I haven't lost, Marissa, not yet. You've made your choice. Now I'll make mine. Marissa's hand shook just slightly, enough for Camille to notice, enough for her to wonder if there was still a way to reach her. But the mission came first, the country came first. Everything they had fought for was on the line, and Camille wasn't about to let it slip away. The moment of truth. For a moment, neither of them moved. The world seemed to stand still like the calm before a storm. Camille could feel her heart pounding, but her mind was clear. She had to focus. She couldn't afford to hesitate. Then Marissa's voice broke the silence, quieter this time. You're not the only one who's lost, Camille. Do you really think I had a choice in all this? They've been pulling the strings from the very beginning. You're just another piece in their game. Camille's eyes narrowed. Who are they, Marissa? Tell me who's behind all this. Who's really calling the shots? For a brief second, Marissa's expression faltered. Her eyes flickered, and Camille caught a glimpse of vulnerability she hadn't seen before. Was this an opening? But just as quickly, Marissa's mask slipped back into place. I can't, she said, her voice low. You wouldn't believe me even if I told you. Camille's frustration grew. She needed the truth, and she needed it now. You're still part of it, aren't you? All of this, you were part of it from the beginning. Marissa's gaze darkened. I had no choice. You think I want to betray my country? You think I wanted to become a pawn in their game? But I was offered something, Camille. A way out, a way to survive. The real enemy. Camille's mind reeled as Marissa's words sank in. Survival. That's what this was about for her. Survival, no matter the cost. It wasn't just about money, power, or ideology. It was about staying alive in a world that would crush anyone it saw as expendable. Who are you trying to survive from, Marissa? Camille asked, her voice tight. Who's pulling your strings? Marissa hesitated again, and Camille could see the torment in her eyes. This wasn't just about betrayal. It was about fear. Fear that had been twisted into something else. Something dark. You wouldn't understand, Marissa whispered, barely audible. There are people far more dangerous than you think. People who control everything. You think you're fighting for justice, but you're just a tool in their war, and I'm just trying to protect myself. Camille's mind spun. This was bigger than she had ever imagined, bigger than anyone could have anticipated. Whoever they were, they had deep roots, and they were playing a game far beyond the small circle Camille had been fighting in. She wasn't just dealing with one traitor. She was up against a network, a shadowy, hidden force pulling the strings from the background. Suddenly, it hit her. If Marissa was right, There was no way out for either of them, unless they fought together. A choice, Camille took a slow step forward, lowering her weapon just slightly. She wasn't going to fire. Not yet. Not until she understood everything. Until she had answers. "Marissa," she said softly, her voice steady, "I know you're scared, but you can't keep running. You can't keep hiding from the truth. I don't want to fight you, but I will if I have to." Marissa's eyes filled with emotion, but she quickly wiped it away, replacing it with the cold resolve Camille had seen before. "I don't need your pity, Camille, and I don't need your help. This is my fight, and I'm going to win it whether you're with me or not." Marissa raised the gun again, but this time her hand wavered. She wasn't sure anymore. Camille saw the doubt, the internal conflict, and she knew that this was her chance. This was the moment she had to reach her. "I don't want to fight you," Camille repeated, taking another step. "But if you don't, trust me, if you don't stop this now, you'll destroy everything you've worked for." Marissa's breath caught in her throat. Her eyes flicked toward Camille's, and for a moment, the world seemed to hold its breath. Then, without warning, Marissa lowered the gun. "I can't." Her voice cracked, and Camille saw the tears threatening to fall. "I can't keep doing this. I don't know what's right anymore." The turning point. For the first time, Camille saw her clearly, not as an enemy, but as a person caught in a system that had devoured her. Camille's resolve softened, but her mission hadn't changed. They needed to expose the truth together before it was too late. "Marissa, I can help you, but you have to come with me. You have to trust me. We can still stop them." For a long moment, Marissa didn't respond. But then slowly she nodded. "Okay," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Okay, let's do it. Let's stop them." The next step, as they turned and made their way toward the exit, the quiet crackle of static came through their comms. Camille reached for her earpiece, her heart racing again. "General Hayes, we have a situation." Ramirez's voice came through, urgent. "We've identified the leader. It's worse than we thought." Camille's stomach dropped. "Who is it?" "Brad," Ramirez replied. "It's Brad. He's been orchestrating this from the beginning. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. What do you think Camille's next move should be? Can Marissa really be trusted again, or is the damage already done? This story is far from over. Stay tuned for more." The revelation, Camille's world seemed to shatter as the name Brad echoed in her ears. He was the one orchestrating everything. All the betrayal, all the manipulation. It had all led back to him, the one person who had been by her side for so long, the man she had trusted implicitly. Brad. Her mind was racing, trying to make sense of everything. How had she missed it? How had she let him get so close? But there was no time for second-guessing. Now. Camille was no stranger to betrayal, and if anything, it only made her more determined to bring the truth to light. She turned to Marissa, who was still trying to process everything herself. "Brad, are you sure? We've been working with him for years. He was one of the most trusted agents in the operation." Marissa's expression was unreadable, but Camille could see the guilt flickering behind her eyes. "I didn't know, Camille. I swear I didn't know. But he's the one who set this all up. He's the one pulling the strings from the shadows." A plan in motion. Camille took a deep breath, steadying herself. She couldn't afford to let her emotions take over now. Brad was the enemy. Everything they had fought for, everything she had believed in was at stake. She had to act fast. "Ramirez," Camille barked into her comms, "get everyone back to base. We're going after Brad." A crackling response came through. "Copy that, General. We'll be waiting for further instructions." Camille's team had already mobilized. She knew the risk they were about to take. Going after Brad would be dangerous, but she couldn't let him continue his manipulation. The time for hesitation was over. The cost of loyalty. As they made their way back to their rendezvous point, Camille couldn't help but think about the cost of loyalty. How many people had been hurt? How many lives shattered because they had trusted the wrong person? She had spent years building relationships, forging connections, only to find out they had all been part of a much bigger game, and Brad had been at the center of it all. Marissa walked beside Camille, her face shadowed with regret. "I didn't want this. I didn't want to betray anyone, but Brad, he had his hold on me, on all of us. He made us believe in something that wasn't real. Camille glanced at her, her expression hardening. I get it. But we don't have time to dwell on it. We've got a job to do. The gathering storm. They reached their safe house just as the sun began to set, casting long shadows over the quiet street. Camille's mind was focused, sharp. She had a plan, but it would require precision and trust, both of which had been in short supply lately. She gathered her team in the dimly lit room, the weight of the mission pressing down on them all. "Listen up," Camille began, her voice calm but commanding. "We know Brad's at the top of this. He's the one pulling the strings. We need to take him down before this whole thing collapses. If we don't act now, we'll lose everything." Sergeant Jackson, the ever-loyal second-in-command, spoke up. "We've got a window of opportunity. We'll move in fast, hit him hard, and get out before anyone knows we were even there." Camille nodded, appreciating Jackson's straightforward approach, but she couldn't afford to think so linearly. "We can't just storm in there. Brad's smart, and he'll be expecting us. We need to go in covertly. Find his weak point, take him down silently, and make sure we get everything, intel, names, everything." She glanced at Marissa, who was standing off to the side, clearly struggling with the weight of her own actions. "Marissa, you're going to be with me on this one. We need to take Brad down together. This is your chance to make things right." Marissa's eyes flickered with uncertainty, but she nodded. "I'm ready." Infiltration. The team set out under the cover of darkness, moving silently through the shadows. The city was eerily quiet, as if holding its breath for what was to come. They reached the compound where Brad was believed to be hiding. It was heavily guarded, the walls reinforced with layers of security, but Camille had a plan. She'd always been the strategist, and now more than ever her mind was in overdrive. They breached the perimeter using the cover of a nearby storm, the heavy rain masking their movements. Camille led her team with precision, directing them to key entry points as they snuck past security. Every step was calculated, every sound muffled. They couldn't afford to make a mistake. Inside, the compound was a maze of narrow hallways and rooms, but Camille was no stranger to this. They moved quickly, efficiently, until they reached the heart of the operation, Brad's command center. Confrontation. Brad was there, sitting at a desk, his back to the door. He hadn't heard them coming. Camille's heart raced, but she kept her breathing steady. This was it, the moment she had been waiting for. The man who had manipulated her and betrayed everything they had fought for was right in front of her. "Brad," Camille said, her voice low but filled with authority. "It's over." Brad turned slowly, his eyes widening in recognition. "Camille, I didn't think you'd make it this far." Camille stepped forward, her weapon drawn but steady at her side. "I've come to stop you. This ends now." He smiled, but it was a cold, calculating smile. "You think it's that simple? You think you can just undo everything I've built?" Camille's eyes narrowed. "You've built nothing but a lie. And now, it's time to take it down." The final decision. Brad's face twisted with rage, and for a moment Camille feared he might pull a weapon. But then he paused, a flicker of something, fear, perhaps, crossing his face. "You really think you can defeat me?" "You're nothing, Camille. Just another soldier in a war you don't understand. You're out of your depth." Camille's resolve only grew stronger. "I understand more than you think, Brad, and I'm not going to let you destroy everything we've worked for." As she stepped closer, Brad's expression darkened. "If I go down, I'm taking you with me." Camille didn't hesitate. She fired first, and the bullet hit its mark. Brad collapsed to the floor, his last breath a gasp of disbelief. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. Do you think Camille made the right choice? What will happen now that Brad is out of the picture? Let us know your thoughts. This story is far from over. The calm. After the storm, the compound was eerily quiet after Brad's fall. Camille stood, over his body, breathing heavily, her thoughts swirling. There was a strange sense of finality, but also a deep emptiness. Brad was gone, but his plans, his network, they were still out there. It wasn't over. Not yet. Marissa stepped forward, her expression unreadable. "It's done, Camille. He's gone." Camille nodded, her eyes still locked on Brad's lifeless form. She wasn't sure how to feel. There was no sense of victory, only a cold realization that the battle had only just begun. "We've stopped him for now," Camille said quietly. "But this was just the beginning. We have to find out who else is involved before it's too late." Jackson moved in beside her, scanning the room. "You're right, General. We need to act fast. If Brad was the key player, someone else is already stepping into his shoes." Camille turned to him, her gaze sharp. "We don't have time to wait. We need to gather every piece of intel we can from here and move out immediately." The data with the team securing the compound, Camille ordered the tech experts to start going through Brad's files. They had to find out everything he knew, who he was working with, and who his contacts were. It was clear now that Brad wasn't just some rogue agent. He was part of a larger, more insidious network. Hours passed in tense silence as the team sifted through Brad's encrypted files. Camille's fingers drummed against the table, her mind racing. She couldn't shake the feeling that they were missing something, that there was a deeper layer to all of this. Finally, one of the analysts, Specialist Hayes, broke the silence. "General, we've cracked into his files. There's a list here. Names, locations, dates. It's all connected. And there's a message." Camille's heart skipped a beat. "A message? What kind of message?" Hayes quickly pulled up the screen. It was a series of encrypted communications. But there was one message that stood out. "The operation is almost complete. Be prepared. The final phase begins soon. We'll need everyone ready. We can't afford failure." The words hit Camille like a punch to the gut. It was clear now. Brad wasn't the final piece of the puzzle. There was something much bigger going on, something they hadn't anticipated. The final phase. Camille's mind raced as she thought about the implications of the message. The final phase? What was it? And who was behind it? "This isn't over," she muttered to herself, the weight of the situation settling in. "This is just a small part of a much bigger plan." Marissa, who had been standing silently by her side, looked up. "What now, Camille?" Camille looked at her, the intensity of the moment settling in. "We go after them. Whoever's behind this, whoever's pulling the strings, we need to find them. And we need to stop them before they can launch whatever final phase they have planned." Jackson stepped forward, determination in his eyes. "We'll need a solid plan. We don't even know who's really involved yet." Camille turned to him, a sharp focus in her eyes. "I don't care who's involved. We're going in. We can't afford to wait any longer." The hunt begins. With the new intel in hand, Camille's team began to track down leads. The names in Brad's files pointed to various locations across the globe, but there was one name that stood out: General Crawford. The message in Brad's file hinted at someone with an extraordinary amount of power. And General Crawford was at the center of it all. "I don't like it," Jackson said, his voice grave. "We're talking about someone high up in the ranks. Someone with the kind of influence we can't just brush off." Camille's mind was already working through the possibilities. General Crawford was a name she knew, an influential figure in military circles. But was he the mastermind behind the entire operation? Or was he simply another pawn in a much larger game? "There's no time to waste," Camille said. "We need to find out everything we can about General Crawford, and we need to do it quickly. If he's involved, we're looking at something much bigger than we thought." The meeting as the team continued their investigation, Camille's mind never stopped racing. She spent hours poring over files, talking to contacts, and trying to connect the dots. The puzzle pieces were scattered all around her, but she couldn't see the full picture just yet. Then an unexpected lead came through. A trusted contact from the intelligence community had information about a secret meeting that was scheduled to take place in a remote location. It was a high-stakes gathering, and General Crawford was rumored to be attending. Camille knew that this was their chance. If they could infiltrate the meeting, they might finally get the answers they needed. But the risk was enormous. They were about to face the very people who had been controlling everything from the shadows. The decision gathering her team, Camille explained the plan. "We have one shot at this. We infiltrate the meeting, gather intel, and get out. We don't engage unless we have to. The goal is to get to Crawford, and find out exactly what the final phase of this operation is. Marissa's eyes flickered with uncertainty, but she didn't speak up. She had already proven her loyalty by standing with Camille, but Camille could still see the weight of the past pressing down on her. She knew the next few days would test everything they had, both as soldiers and as people. "I'm ready," Jackson said, his voice unwavering. "Let's finish this." The calm before the storm, the team set out once again, moving under the cover of night. The quiet tension that had marked the past few days seemed to hang in the air, heavy and thick. Camille couldn't shake the feeling that they were walking into the lion's den, unaware of just how far the conspiracy stretched. As they approached the location of the meeting, Camille took a deep breath. This was it. This was the moment. That would change everything. "Remember," she said quietly to her team, "we're in this together. We stick to the plan and we get out when we've got what we need." With that, they moved forward into the darkness, ready for whatever awaited them. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. Do you think Camille and her team will make it out alive? What's Crawford's role in all of this? The pieces are starting to fall into place, but the real danger is just ahead. Stay tuned, this is far from over. Into the belly of the beast, Camille's heart pounded in her chest as she and her team approached the remote location where the secret meeting was about to take place. It was a desolate compound, surrounded by high walls and fortified entry points. The air was thick with tension, every step they took amplifying the danger they were walking into. "Stay sharp," Camille murmured to her team, her voice steady despite the rising storm in her chest. "We don't know who else is here or what we're walking into. Trust no one but each other." Her eyes scanned the area, trying to anticipate every move. The compound was heavily guarded, but she knew that with the right strategy, they could slip past unnoticed. "Everyone stay close," Jackson ordered, his voice as calm as ever. "Camille, I'll cover you. Marissa, you're with me. Let's move." The infiltration. The plan was simple. Infiltrate, gather intel on General Crawford's involvement, and get out before anyone knew they were there. But as Camille moved deeper into the compound, something felt wrong. She couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched, even as they stayed hidden in the shadows. Every turn they made, every shadow they passed, seemed to grow more oppressive. It was as if the compound itself were holding its breath, waiting for something to happen. Camille's instinct screamed at her that they weren't the only ones lurking in the darkness. They reached the heart of the compound, an underground facility that appeared to be the center of operations. The door was locked, but Camille's team quickly bypassed the security measures, slipping inside without a sound. Inside, they found a high-tech control center, complete with monitors, communication equipment, and stacks of paperwork detailing covert operations. But what Camille was really searching for was a single name: General Crawford. The confrontation as... They went through the files. Camille felt her blood run cold. It wasn't just Crawford who was involved. It was the highest levels of government and military leadership. There was no doubt about it now. The conspiracy was bigger than anyone had imagined. And then she found it, a detailed plan for the final phase, an operation that would shift the global balance of power in ways no one could have predicted. It wasn't just about military control, it was about complete dominance. A plan to overthrow the government, destabilize the global economy, and manipulate key leaders into doing their bidding. She couldn't believe it. All of it, the operation. She had been fighting against Brad's betrayal, the manipulation. It had all been leading up to this. Then the voice that haunted her the most echoed in the room. "You shouldn't have come here, Camille." Camille whipped around, her heart skipping a beat. Standing in the doorway was General Crawford, his cold eyes locked onto hers, and for a moment she froze, feeling the weight of everything crashing down on her. She had known this confrontation would come, but now that it was here, the reality of the situation hit her harder than expected. "You've been busy," Crawford continued, his tone mocking. "You really thought you could stop this? You've been playing checkers while I've been playing chess, and now look where you are." Camille's hand tightened around the weapon at her side. "It ends here, Crawford." Crawford chuckled darkly, stepping further into the room. "Oh, you think you can take me down just like that? You're nothing but a pawn, Camille, just like everyone else in this game. Her mind raced. Was this the moment she'd been preparing for? Was she really prepared to end this, knowing the consequences? The weight of the decision was suffocating. Could she trust her team to help her now? Could she even trust herself? The truth. You don't understand, do you? Crawford continued, his voice rising. This isn't just about power or control, it's about survival. The world is fragile, Camille. And someone has to be strong enough to make the hard choices. Your mission was never about stopping me. It was about stopping the inevitable. Camille's eyes narrowed. No. This is about greed. This is about you taking everything for yourself. Crawford smiled, a cold, sinister grin. Call it what you want, but it's too late now. You've already played your part. The words stung. He was right, she had been part of this. But the difference was she didn't have to let him win. The final choice. With a swift motion, Camille drew her weapon, pointing it directly at Crawford. The silence in the room was deafening, broken only by the sound of her breathing. She had never been so sure of anything in her life. I won't let you destroy everything we've worked for, she said, her voice low but resolute. Crawford's smile faded, replaced with something much darker. You think you can stop this? The system is already in motion. You've already lost. I haven't lost, Camille shot back. Not yet. With that, she made her decision. She fired. The aftermath. The room fell silent again as Crawford crumpled to the ground, his eyes wide with disbelief. Camille's breath came in ragged gasps, her heart pounding in her chest. It was done. She had stopped him, but the victory felt hollow. The information she had uncovered was devastating. The conspiracy had been exposed, but it had spread far too wide. There was no easy solution, no simple fix. The world was on the brink, and Camille knew that the fight was far from over. Camille, Jackson's voice broke through the silence. He and Marissa were by her side now, their faces tense. What do we do now? Camille looked down at Crawford's body, then back at the information on the screens. The gravity of the situation settled in. There was no going back now. The conspiracy had been uncovered, but the real fight was just beginning. We finish this, she said firmly. We rebuild. We take down every last one of them. The final phase might have been stopped, but the battle for the future of the world was just beginning. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. What do you think will happen now that the truth is out? Will Camille and her team be able to bring down the rest of the conspiracy, or is the world already too far gone? Let us know your thoughts. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough?